Today we're taking a closer look at running AI on an ESP32-P4. We covered this Waveshare 7-inch touchscreen in a previous video, and when we did, we talked about the microphones and the speaker that came in the box, and one of the primary use cases for those devices was a local AI assistant, which is what we've got running and we want to demonstrate for you today. There's a push-to-talk button right on the main screen, and when we push that, the request goes over to the LLM, not leaving the local network, and then the response comes back through these speakers. So let's dig right in. Okay, so the push to talk button is right here on the screen, and I'll just demonstrate real quickly how that works. Give me some interesting facts about where I am.
Denver, Colorado is a city located in the state of Colorado, USA.
Now, I don't want to get hung up on the intelligence of the response because that will depend on the model that you're using to service this. Which brings out the key concept here. The ESP32-P4 is not what's running the LLM. It is acting like a client, and it is taking in the audio received from the microphones, and it is streaming that audio over to the server. In this case, we're running that server on a Radsa Dragon Q6A. If you haven't seen the review, we'll post a link to that video down below. That machine is running the LLM on an NPU and then streaming the audio back to the ESP32-P4, which is then playing it back through the speakers. The impressive part about all of this to me is how well these microphones work. So when we talk directly to Peregrine, which is what we call our local AI assistant running on that Dragon Q6A, we run it through a Jabra 510 speaker. And that is a really high-end noise-canceling headphone, and it does a really good job of processing the speech that's asking the question. But with this P4, I am just as impressed at the ability and the quality for it to process the audio of the question being asked, and then also the audio quality coming through these speakers. The other thing to keep in mind is that it is a speaker connection, so if you wanted to, you could plug in a 3.5mm headphone jack to that speaker output and then run the audio through external speakers instead, if that's your preference. So let's dive into the code behind all of this, and then we'll take a look at the case design and how we made these microphones work and process as well as they do while it's inside of its enclosure. Our code walkthrough starts here inside of eStudio. You can see we use this for all of our UI design, and the push to talk button is defined right there in the lower right-hand corner of the clock screen. Then on the left-hand side, we have two actions defined here inside of eStudio, PTT pressed, PTT released, and those basically just create the signatures in the header file that will actually get implemented in code. So if we come over to the code and we take a look at the main code and the actions.c, we can clearly see those two events defined right here in code, and they are each one-liners that call additional methods, and that's to prevent any blocking from the UI while we process this stuff in the background. This method that we're looking for when the button is pressed is actually going to be inside of our components, and then the Peregrine voice, and then inside of the source file and the Peregrine voice.c file. A quick find in this file will take us right to that method, and what we'll see here is that it's a very simple method. Essentially, all this is doing is checking to see if there's another recording already happening, and if there is, it just exits. If there's not, then we can go ahead and we can do the audio mic capture start. The audio mic capture start will be defined back over in our main and our audio C file. And what this method is doing, it is basically allocating the memory that we're going to use to store the ADC data. And then it just loops through as you're speaking to record that data, put it into memory, and it continues until it's stopped or the max value is hit. In the process, it adds a slight software gain to help with volume levels, and then it creates a task, and we pin that task to core 1. This is according to ESP's own guidance to prevent potential Wi-Fi conflicts. Now, before we send the data over to the LLM, we do have one more item defined over here in our actions file, and that is basically a callback. This is a simple method that is essentially doing the pulsation to animate the button, letting the user know that we are in fact processing the data, since it does take a little bit to make its way over to the LLM, and then for the response to start speaking back. Now, to take a look at the details of what happens with that job, we need to jump back over to our audio.c file and look for our audio mic capture stop. In here, we can see that it's taking that buffer, it's creating the task, and it's putting it into queue, as well as logging that it is complete. Now to see what the details of that job look like, we're going to jump over to our Peregrine Voice and we're going to take a look at the run job method. So this is essentially where the heavy lifting takes place. Inside of here, we are basically taking the buffer that was created. We are setting the URL. We're combining in the configuration that was read in from the SD card for the chat API endpoint, setting the size of that HTTP method, sending the request over, setting the content type as well as the authorization token for security. And then this comes back with the response from the LLM and loops through it to play it back through the speakers, and then finally closes out all of the HTTP calls. As you can see, the overall code is not that complex, so now we'll take a look and dive deeper into the enclosure design and how this all comes together. This is not the easiest Waveshare screen to design enclosures for, and unfortunately Waveshare does not provide a step file for this particular one. You have to work around these connectors at the bottom, the micro SD card connectors over here, boot and reset buttons over here, your USB connections on this side, and then the power switch over here, as well as speaker and battery connectors. So all of that creates enough challenge. But then if you flip this screen over, you will also notice if you look closely, this left edge is a little bit thinner than this right edge, and that is because the screen is not centered in the frame. So you have to take care of offsetting all of that in your design. Then the fact that these standoffs and the threaded holes are on the backside just means that it has to pull itself down into a case that you design. And I was really struggling with all of this until I came across this Maker World user that had this one here. Found it and printed it, and I really liked it. It has the opening on the sides. It's a big opening here for the USB, and then another opening over here. Now, the one challenge that we had is that this fitment is so tight that if you push it down in there, you can see that it will actually break off that little plastic power tab, and we didn't want to deal with that. So we made some changes, but he had this clever design here where the frame goes around, goes over the top, and this creates the symmetrical frame around the outside, and he's got that accommodated for in the positioning of the board in the case itself. Then he has these little clip connectors here, and those latch into the top and the bottom side to keep that cover on. So we really liked that one, and we basically reached out to him to see if he was okay with us making a modified version of it. And he was, so be sure to go over and like his project on there. Our modified version looks very similar, except we just created the additional openings for all of the JST connectors on all the sides, the speaker and the battery connectors. And then we also opened this up for the coin cell battery there. And then we designed a slotted hole here. We have our own little power switch, and basically that drops into here. And you do have to be careful to line up the OEM power switch with the little opening in the center of that hole. But once you do that, you have a fully enclosed case with the power switch on the side. So with it inserted into the case, you can see that we have the power switch here on the left-hand side, which does work by sliding that one on the inside. We have access to the USB, USB-C, we have access to the micro SD slot, and then we also have a nice clean finish around there. On the back side are all of those connectors open, as well as access to the RTC and the speaker connections as well. And then we created this backing that can just go onto here. His original design was left open. We thought this would be a great way for people to take this and modify it if they wanted to deepen it for a thicker battery or place additional sensors on there, that they would be able to do that. And then once we plug this into the USB-C, then we can use that factory switch if we desire to go ahead and turn the screen off. From there, we just took it a step further and extended that down to then make the case that you see here, making room for the speaker to be mounted inside with the grills over the top. And then we have these two little inlets here, and that is for the pass-through. Since those microphones are on the back side of the screen, those channels actually curve up, and there are cutouts in the center of those sections so that they route the air up into those microphones. And again, the performance so far has been fantastic. So we're really happy with this. Hopefully you guys have found this video helpful. Maybe you have an embedded AI project that you're planning, and either the information that we shared or the case design has been helpful to you. If it has been, please be sure to give this video a great big thumbs up. If you haven't already, be sure to click that subscribe button and that bell notification to get notified whenever we upload new videos. And until next time, remember, it is your vehicle, your data, Wilderness Wired.